Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. What's poppin'? My dogs.
What's up? What's up?
My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Today we got a good one, and I don't want to waste any time. We can talk pleasantries in a second. I don't want to waste any time because we got to get right into these wide receiver rankings that we have today. But we're going to bring to you the top 12 wide receivers that we have for 2022. These are the official rankings. I feel like we should do a show specifically pertaining, like where we do like a top 50 overall.
That'd be cool.
We quickly run through them, not spending 10 minutes on each one, but just discussing where we have guys. But anyway, we're going to talk about our top 12 wide receivers. We have both of our rankings here. We'll go through it one by one and just discuss some of the variables. Before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, please leave a review and share this pod with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you may have for us based on these rankings. And if you want to, list all 12 of your top 12 for wide receivers and put them in the comments. It was a long comment, but it's worth it.
It is. It is worth it. I want to see other people's views because I've seen a lot of different stuff with the rankings so far this year.
Yeah, it seems a little bit loony.
A little bit.
It's a little this weird. This particular year feels weird. But anyway, so without further ado, let's jump into our top 12 wide receiver rankings. And the reason why I say it feels weird is because I'm curious to see if this is the case at running back, but earlier when we did rankings earlier in the year, there was like a set guys that I liked for the top 12. Like usually in my head, I'm thinking, okay, these guys are definitely top 12, top 14.
Right.
There's a lot of guys. At this point in the game, I feel like there's 6, maybe 7 guys that are wide receiver ones, and then there's just a mix of guys that could be wide receiver ones.
Yeah. Then there's like, for me, it's like I think the top 9 for me are all pretty good for wide receiver ones. Mm-hmm. And then there's like 10 to 15 guys that could be.
And I've never had that happen. Like Keenan Allen is in both of our top 12s.
He's in my top 10.
He's in your top 10. So it's like, what? Something weird's going on.
Yeah.
Like last year, I wouldn't even put him in the conversation. But there's guys that we did put in the top 12 last year that kind of fell off, right? Calvin Ridley, Chris Godwin, DK Metcalf. So some of those guys. And then the guys that you would anticipate that maybe jump up in the conversation as teams shift, like the Denver Broncos, is Jerry Judy good enough to jump into that top 12?
Sure.
And from what I've seen from the rest of the fantasy community, he has not been. He's not in our top 12, by the way. Right now, Jerry Judy is wide receiver 24. Jalen Waddle's still ahead of him. And there's a full wide receiver.
I personally am higher on Jerry Judy than the consensus, but
yeah, me too. But anyway, so let's jump into our top 12 wide receivers. And I feel like we should talk about these in groups because the top 3, I would say, is a tier 1 for me.
Yeah, definitely.
And
they're
then
in their own tier.
And then Rick and I have the same 4, 5, and 6. And then our back half is different. So let's break this into groups. And we'll start with part 1 here. Which is my top 3 being Justin. Wow, I'm just forcing myself into a re-ranking. Number 1 for me is Jamar Chase. Number 1 for Rick is Justin Jefferson. Number 2 for me is Justin Jefferson. Number 2 for Rick is Cooper Kupp. And number 3 for me is Cooper Kupp. And number 3 for Rick is Jamar Chase. So let's talk about which guy you want to talk about first.
Really doesn't matter to me. I think all 3 of these guys are the clear top guys.
All right, let's start with Justin Jefferson then.
Okay.
We'll make it easy. So why do you have Justin Jefferson as your wide receiver 1 this year?
He has been dominant. First 2 years in the league, he's been slightly better each year. He was wide receiver 6 his rookie season, wide receiver 4 last year. And now they have a new coaching staff who's coming from the LA Rams, and has been quoted to saying that he wants to use Justin Jefferson like Cooper Kupp. And to me, right when I heard that, instantly I was going to put Jefferson as my wide receiver 1. Cooper Kupp, it's hard to argue after the year he had.
The new coach of the Vikings, right?
Yes.
He, I can't remember from the coaches. So is he a product of the McVay tree?
Let me go check. I think it's
because that would make more sense if he came from the McVay tree, if he was going to utilize Cooper Kupp.
I'm pretty sure he is, but I'm just.
I can look it up.
He at least came from the Vikings coaching staff. But yeah, Vikings
Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah,
he came from the Rams. Rams OC.
Yeah, well, I knew he came from but he does come from, because he comes from Washington originally, which is where Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, he comes from that system.
Yep. Well, anyway, so that makes sense. I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah, so he wants to use Jefferson like Cooper Kupp. Adam Thielen's getting old. He's like 31, so he's going to demand a high target share. He had 167 targets last year.
Yeah,
I could see that happening again. I don't think Cooper Kupp finishes as wide receiver 1 2 straight years, so that kind of leaves Chase or Jefferson. You ended up going with Chase, and I think that's fine. That's fair. But for me, I'll take the guy who's in year 3, who's a little bit. I don't want to say more polished, but he has more NFL experience under his belt. And that quote is just so juicy to me.
You get sweaty.
Yeah, it did get me sweaty.
So for me, I have Justin Jefferson too, only because I think a lot of these players, it comes down to the quarterback that they're playing with. And a guy like Cooper Kupp last year, I mean, Stafford was good, and he played better than Kirk Cousins will ever play in a season. So,
sure.
To me, I look at the quarterback for Justin Jefferson. It's not really his fault. I agree with you. I like the talent. I like the player. Obviously, that's why he's my number 2. And I think he has just as much a chance as Jamar Chase to be the wide receiver 1. Only reason why I take Chase over him is because just the pure fact that the quarterback is a lot better. Like, I think Joe Burrow is and will be better as a quarterback in the NFL than Matt Stafford. So, that's why I have Chase 1. But I also think there's other things for Jamar Chase, and we'll move on to the next guy, which is Jamar Chase. So you have him ranked 3. I'll just give my thoughts on as to why he's ranked 1. Jamar Chase, I liked him coming into last year, and I don't like rookie wide receivers. I didn't even draft Jamar Chase last year. I didn't expect a lot out of him. What he did, like he was considered a transitional talent coming into the NFL. He was drafted number 4 or number 5?
4th overall.
4th overall. Yeah. And we knew he was going to be a transitional talent. We knew he might be the best wide receiver in a couple of years. From what I saw in year 1, and based on the production that he put on the field in year 1, he to me is already probably the most talented wide receiver in the NFL. And that might be my love for Joe Burrow talking, but I love Jamar Chase. I love Jamar Chase. So I think the connection there between Joe Burrow and Chase is definitely strong. Like, people tried to make that case last year. I'm like, I don't think it translates into the NFL. Well, clearly it did. So he's got a strong connection with him, and obviously showed his talent last year. What was he, top 6 in fantasy football at the wide receiver position? PPR?
I believe he was wide receiver 5.
Wide receiver 5. And that was in his rookie season. I think he takes a mammoth leap this year with Joe Burrow having a better offensive line and a better offense overall, and everyone having a year of experience under their belt and a year of cohesion under their belt in this offense. I think Jamar Chase just ascends into that wide receiver 1 spot where he should be, both in dynasty and in redraft. And I didn't think it was going to happen this fast, but it did, at least for me. I love Jamar Chase. But like I said, the quarterback is the big difference and the big separating factor between Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase for me. And I think Justin Jefferson is really good. Like it's 1A and 1B right now, just because, like you said, Jefferson's got slightly more experience, but Jamar Chase is just ridiculous. And I think that if you have him on your team, you're gonna have at least a top 3 wide receiver. So I can't wait to see that develop.
It's a fair argument. I mean, you're talking about arguably the most talented wide receiver in the league playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So
one of the most talented wide receiver. I mean, one of the most talented quarterbacks.
Right, exactly. So the only reason I just have him below those guys is just because, I think he could take a leap like Jefferson did year 1 to year 2. But Jefferson went from wide receiver 6 to wide receiver 4. So like if Chase goes from wide receiver 5 to wide receiver 3, I could see that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I could easily see him being wide receiver 1. But I just think it's kind of a huge jump. He also had 13 touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I mean, if he gets more than 13, that means Burrow's probably winning MVP. So if Burrow has just the same season he did last year, I don't know if Chase gets 13 again. With Higgins there and Tyler Boyd, and targets to go around. And that's my only thing with Chase. I think the offense will be spread out a little bit. And this is nitpicking here because I think Chase is obviously ridiculous. I have him in multiple leagues, thankfully. I got roasted in one startup last year because I took Chase ahead of a couple of guys and ended up working pretty well for me. But he is a really good, really, really good player. But I just think the 13 touchdowns is something I look at from last year that it's going to be hard to repeat that again.
Who's he throwing the ball to?
I know it's Burrow. I know. I get it. But
he's going to throw it to Jamar Chase.
He is. But if Higgins gets like 9 or 10 touchdowns,
normally I agree with you.
He gets like 5 or 6.
But Jamar Chase now knows how to play in the NFL.
Right. So, are you scared that teams will now double team him more?
So I was just about to bring this up. As a rookie, this does not happen for rookies, by the way. This is why this player is just absolutely absurd. Against press coverage, he had an 81.6% success rate, which is 95th percentile. Basically, top 5 in the league.
Yeah, that was his strength coming out of college, though, wasn't it?
Yeah. So against man and against press, he's insane. He's very, very good. So demanding more coverage from corners is not something that's going to be a problem for him. And I don't think it was a problem for him last year because I think after a couple of really good games, what are they going to do? Keep covering Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins?
Right, yeah. No, I mean, trust me, these are all fair arguments. It's like you can't really go wrong with any of these guys at all.
Right. But and the third guy really quickly is Cooper Kupp on my list. Rick has him too. I think it's clear, the consensus right now has Cooper Kupp 1. And there's a lot of people, if you go on the expert consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros, you'll see Cooper Kupp 1. This is out of 91 experts.
Yeah.
So this is not just 5 people decided that it's 91 people in the fantasy community came together and said, you know what? Cooper Kupp's the wide receiver 1. I feel like looking at Cooper Kupp, and this is why I have him 3. And Rick can speak to why he has him 2, and I'm kind of curious to know why he is number 2 over Jamar Chase. But I have him 3 because there's definitely going to be some solid regression this year. When you come off the best season, one of the best seasons ever for a wide receiver, there is going to be some form of solid regression at the position. So I don't know what that's going to look like. It could fall. He could have massive regression and fall into 7, 8, or 9. Or he could just have a little bit of regression and end up wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4. I think he's going to regress overall. So I'm going to take the bet that it's not going to be a whole ton and that you're okay drafting Cooper Kupp. But just to throw him at number 1 because last year he had the number 1 overall season, to me is just a little bit, I don't know. It's kind of like the last 2 years Josh Allen's been quarterback 1 and we just kind of keep throwing him up there. And at some point that streak's going to end. I'm not ranking Cooper Kupp based on like, okay, he can't do that again, but I don't think he can do it again. And I think you have Allen Robinson there for a full season. You still have Van Jefferson there. There's going to be some, like, there's not a lot of vacated targets on that team. And I think that what you saw out of OBJ down the stretch was there was an even distribution. I don't know that Cooper Kupp is going to get over 180, 190 targets. If that happens, I don't think he will. If it happens, he should be wide receiver 1, but that's what I think the expectation is for a lot of people because he did get targeted a lot. I think he was like up in the 170s.
He had 191 targets.
Oh my God. That's not feasible. No, I don't think they're going to do that.
He got 145 catches. So
I know. It's just like all of those numbers are so extrapolated.
It's absurd.
It's insane. But I just don't know if he can repeat it. I think the target share will be there, 170 around there. And he's obviously a clean catch, so he can definitely, do the job at the wide receiver position. We know that because he had an incredible year. But I just don't. What the Rams did last year as a team is very good. It's hard to replicate. It's hard to continue. So I don't want to take the risk of drafting Cooper Kupp as the first wide receiver off the board, knowing that there's going to be a lot of variables floating around, and it will lead to Cooper Kupp not being wide receiver 1. But 191 targets, 145 catches is
See, here's the thing. I agree with your argument, and there will be regression, absolutely. But let's take away 100 fantasy points from Cooper Kupp last year. 100 full fantasy points. He still finishes as the wide receiver 1. He would finish ahead of Justin Jefferson and ahead of Jamar Chase. And that's a lot. Mm-hmm. So, yes, will there be regression? Absolutely. But I don't think it's going to really matter unless it's major regression. Like, let's say he goes from 191 targets to like 130 targets, which I don't think that will happen. I don't know if he's going to finish wide receiver 1 back-to-back years. To me, that's feels like a lot. Which is why I have Jefferson ahead of him. But it's why I have him ahead of ahead of Chase still, just because of how good he was last year. Even with regression, he's still going to be a dominant player. The year he had last year was special. And to be honest, yes, his situation will change, but it doesn't change really that much because Allen Robinson's just going to slide in for the OBJ/Robert Woods role.
Yeah.
And then you still have Van Jefferson there again, and Matt Stafford's still there, and Sean McVay's still the coach. So it's not like the scheme's going to change, the quarterback's going to change. Nothing is really changing in the offense other than Allen Robinson, but you had Robert Woods and OBJ last year. So
I mean, the kid caught a touchdown every week, essentially.
Yeah, that's not going to happen again. Like, I could see him getting like 12 touchdowns.
And with that, that's how many fantasy points is that? 24?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could see 200 less receiving yards, 20 less receptions, 4 or 5 less touchdowns, and that's a massive regression. Like, that's a lot.
And that's still like 300.
Oh yeah. I also think based on last season too, like if you're looking at the numbers from last year, there wasn't really anybody that was gonna be close. Whereas I think this year the gap will start closing. Sure. Like, and just to give you an idea too, really quickly before we move into the next section, unless you have any other thoughts on Cooper Kupp.
Close it out.
Is that you go look at the previous seasons, 367 for Kupp last year in half PPR. You move to 2020, Devante Adams had 300 as the wide receiver 1. 2019, Michael Thomas had 300 as the wide receiver 1. 2018, 284 for Tyreek Hill as the wide receiver 1. 2017, 261. So what Cooper Kupp did last year is, I mean, obviously they had one extra game because of the extended season, so that changes things. But what he did last year was just such an anomaly that to expect him to do it again is asinine. And I think
that's for the people that are taking him second overall.
Yes, yeah. So, but either way, you have him 2, I have him 3. It's splitting hairs, but I like Chase and Jefferson a lot more than I like Cooper Kupp, and Cooper Kupp's also a little bit. Age is not a concern for me for this season, but he is 29 years old. So
yeah, in Dynasty it kind of is, but for redraft, not yet.
Like how many? Is he going to make it through a 17-game season completely healthy? There's other questions there. Whereas like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase are young, they're ready to go, and I think this is the passing of the torch at this point to those two kids. But anyway.
Yeah, it might be.
Let's move on to the next guys and try to make this quickly because literally phase 1 is complete and we're 21 minutes in already. That is 4, 5, and 6, which Rick and I have as the same guys. So
I was going to say this will be quicker.
4 is Stefan Diggs, 5 is CeeDee Lamb, 6 is Devante Adams. So we'll start with Stefan Diggs. I'm surprised that Rick actually had the same middling rankings here because I thought I was going to be higher on CeeDee Lamb. And Rick actually was like, should I put him 4? And I was like, what the hell? If you put him 4, I got to move him up. Because I want to be matched or higher because I love CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
But anyway, so Stefan Diggs obviously has been really good the last couple of years. I don't think he has wide receiver 1 or even top 2 capabilities.
Yeah, he's more of a safe wide receiver 4,
like
if that is a thing.
If you're in that range of like early second round and Stefan Diggs is on the board, I think you're safe taking him. He's going to be a guy that produces at least at a top 5 to top 7 volume.
No, you're getting a wide receiver 1.
You're getting a wide receiver
100%.
1 automatic. So as long as he stays healthy. You have Josh Allen as the quarterback, like he'll be fine. And obviously the Bills pass the ball a lot. So for him, he's 4 for me just because the guys behind him are
question marks.
I think there's some more question marks around those players and a little bit more inconsistency.
They have higher ceilings though, I would say.
Yes, yep, I agree 100%. Stefan Diggs is like, but sometimes the wide receiver position, especially when you're drafting like the wide receiver, your first wide receiver, your first like running back, it's good to have that player that you know is going to get you a wide receiver 1 performance on a week-to-week basis, and not have a guy that you draft at like if I draft, and I love CeeDee Lamb, and even I mean I don't know about Devante Adams anymore, but I do love CeeDee Lamb, and like Lamb has a ceiling to jump into the same conversation as top 3. Especially, we'll talk about in a second, but being the only guy there. So it's like he could jump up, but he's also inconsistent, and there's some other problems with the Cowboys as a whole offensively. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. So what you get out of the Bills' offense is consistency. What you get out of Stefan Diggs is consistency, and I think that's why he has to be 4. And consistency sometimes is enough to get you, drafting breakout players like Jerry Judy in the 6th round. That wins you championships, but consistency is where you get that base foundation for your team, and I think that's what you get out of Stefan Diggs, and that's why he's 4 for me. So anyway.
Yeah, no, agreed. Diggs is definitely a safe bet. Not to mention Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley are gone. Mm-hmm. So I think that more opens up things for like Gabe Davis. And maybe Dawson Knox, but it just shows that Diggs is going to be the clear cut number 1 once again in a high passing offense.
Bro, I can't hold this in. Unrelated to fantasy football. A week ago, they said that Washington Wizards point guard Bradley Beal was going to opt back into his contract with the Wizards, and he just opted out.
So he's eligible to sign.
Anyway,
is that a good thing for Celtics fan or a bad thing?
I don't know.
I can't even tell.
He just said he wants to win. So, anyway, sorry. Celtics fans hoping for the best.
Basketball break for
anyway,
30 seconds.
Finish what you were saying on Stefan Diggs.
I pretty much did. I was just saying that with Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders gone, there's like 600 pass attempts in that offense. And Gabe Davis will definitely get more this year than he did last year.
Right.
Dawson Knox might get a little bit more than he did last year. But Diggs, he's good for another 160, 165.
Yeah, he should be fine. Now, talking about the next guy, number 7 or number 5, CeeDee Lamb, wrapping up our top 5. Lamb is a really, really interesting player, and
this is the one that has the highest ceiling, but probably the lowest floor.
Yes. Right now, the ECR got this guy 6, so we're not that far off. We're right there.
No.
I was surprised that he was 6.
But we're talking about a guy who's never finished inside the top 15.
Yeah. So CeeDee was a breakout receiver for us last year, and he did in some ways break out. Early part of the season, he was very good. He was a wide receiver 1. He was basically top 6 or top 7 for most of the season. And then there were just moments where he just would not show up on a week, or they wouldn't throw him the ball. There's this other major problem with the Dallas Cowboys where before they would just get their pants ripped off by teams defensively, and they would be so far behind that guys like CeeDee Lamb would get trash time points. And last year, they were good. They weren't behind the whole time, and there was no trash time. So, I think that affected CeeDee a little bit because of the way that they run their offense. They're not a prolific. I mean, I'd like to say that they are. They dropped 456 on the Patriots in the regular season, but 456 offensive yards. But I don't know. It's just when I look at them, they don't seem like a team. Like the Bills are going to throw it 690 times probably. And then is Dallas going to throw it 690 times? Or are they just going to mix and match with Tony Pollard, Zeke, and Dak and try to figure out, what the offense is going to look like? I don't know. But what I do know is Amari's gone. They traded him. Michael Gallup may start the season on the PUP list. And Cedric Wilson is also gone.
Yeah.
So they're legitimately left with CeeDee Lamb. And that's it. And Gallup is going to come back, and I actually like Gallup. I think he can play a better secondary role. But I think last year, Amari Cooper was getting the ball shoved down his throat by Dak Prescott, and Dak liked to throw to Cooper. And that affected CeeDee Lamb's target share on a week-to-week basis. So some weeks he would get targeted 10, 12, 13 times, and then some weeks he'd get targeted 5. And I think now that Cooper is out of the picture, we're not going to be force-feeding targets to Michael Gallup. We're going to be force-feeding targets to CeeDee Lamb, and he's going to get 10 to 15, 10 to 13, 10 to 12, we'll be safe, 10 to 12 targets a week. And I think that would put him in the top 5. If he stays healthy, he's on the field for most of the season, that would put him in the top 5. He has a ceiling to jump into that top 3 conversation next year, but his floor is also like wide receiver 15. So there's a lot of risk tied to him. If he was safer, he would be my 4. He might even be my 3. But because he's not in that conversation yet, a little bit more. But this is a guy that I'm legitimately trying to get in every league in the second round. If he's available for me, he's gone in the second round.
Yeah. If you believe in the player, then this will be his breakout year. The thing is, with CeeDee Lamb, as you mentioned, is the targets and Dak's connection with Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
One thing that I found interesting was that he only had 6 touchdowns last year, and Dak threw 37 touchdown passes. So Amari Cooper had 8. Dalton Schultz had 8. That could stay the same. But the Cooper 8 is gone. Cedric Wilson had 6. He's gone. Mm-hmm. A guy named Malik Turner, who had 16 total targets, 12 catches, had 3 receiving touchdowns last year.
Wow.
There was Corey Clement had a receiving touchdown. Sean McKean, I don't even know his name, 4 catches on the season. He had 1 touchdown. There was just, Blake Jarwin had 2 touchdowns. There was a lot of spread out receiving touchdowns for the Cowboys last year. I don't think that happens as much. Will Dak throw 37 touchdowns? Maybe not. But with Cooper and Cedric Wilson gone, Schultz is still going to get, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns as the tight end red zone option.
Yeah.
But CeeDee Lamb should have a career high in touchdowns. So if he just gets more than 6 touchdowns and he gets, let's say, 20 more targets, which isn't really that crazy with Cooper and Cedric Wilson gone, and Michael Gallup going to be injured for the first 3 weeks of the season. That leaves CeeDee Lamb at 140, 150 targets with like 8 or 9 touchdowns, 1,400 yards. You're looking at a top 10 easily receiver there, maybe even top 5. And that's kind of that's what I think bare minimum it is for CeeDee Lamb. I could see him getting, 10 to 12 touchdowns, 160, 170 targets. And if that happens, then he's a top 5 receiver easily, and maybe even top 3.
Yeah, I agree. Let's break this show into 2 parts so that we're not even halfway through. We're going to break it into 2 parts. But the last guy that we'll talk about, unless you had any more on CeeDee Lamb.
No, we can talk about
is Devante Adams.
Everyone's going to get mad at us for putting Adams at 6.
So the ECR for Adams is 4. And I like to get let's give the top 4, top 3, Adams is still there argument before we talk about why we don't like him as a guy that high. The argument for those people is, well, he wants to play with Derek Carr. That's his guy.
Yeah, they have a good connection. That's true.
Yeah. And that Raiders offense is going to be a lot better with him.
Yeah, probably could be. Yeah,
and he's probably going to get 160 targets. Yeah, I don't like any of those arguments, and the reason why is because A, he's not getting 160 targets.
I don't think so either.
B, this offense is not going to be better than the Packers' offense was last year. And C,
probably not.
And C, what was the first thing I said?
His connection with Carr.
If you're telling me that Derek Carr can produce for Devante Adams better than Aaron Rodgers can, you're smoking many drugs that you probably should not be smoking. So, I don't like Devante Adams this year. This is the one guy that I have kind of like if you hold me down and force me to draft him, then I will. But I feel like this is going to be like a very, very disappointing selection in any way, shape, or form.
Especially for those taking him in the first round.
For his underdog ADP right now, he's going as the 5th wide receiver off the board. Pick 11-3, which is essentially still in the first round.
It is in the first round, yeah.
So I don't hate Devante Adams. I never hated Devante Adams. But and then you're not even getting into the variables at this point, which I find interesting too, is Devante Adams is old. He's 29 years old. The same age as Cooper Kupp, by the way. But he's 29 years old. And by the time the season starts, I think he's going to be almost 30.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
I believe he's going to be 30. So he's getting older. He's in a new offense in Las Vegas. His quarterback is not as good. He's not going to get as many targets because that's not how the Raiders and that's not how Josh McDaniels really runs their offense. And I don't buy the connection thing. I don't care. No one in the NFL over the past 5, 6, 7 years has had a better connection than Devante Adams and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Do they have a good connection? Yeah, I'm sure they do. But Rodgers and Adams also had a good connection, so what does that matter?
Yeah. I'm borderline. I don't know if you agree with this, but I'm borderline he's a bust this year.
Yeah, it's hard for me to go that far, but I do agree with you. It's just because he's still such a good player.
If there's anybody in the top 10, 12 last year that will not participate in the top 10 or 12 this year, I feel or let's say top 5, I feel like it's Devante Adams.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I do think he's just such a good player still, which is why I still have him at 6. And I think, I do think the connection with him and Carr is real, but it doesn't really mean anything because he had a connection with Rodgers. But even so if you add the connection and Adams is still a good player, so he's still going to produce. Yeah. It's just not going to be to the level that he has been in years past, and I think to the expectation of some people. I know one guy who is in a league that we're both in that I will not name. Believes that he's going to be even better on the Raiders than he was with the Packers.
I don't even know how you can feasibly believe that.
Yeah, considering he was wide receiver 1 in 2020 in 14 games played, and then last year he was wide receiver 2. So I don't think that's happening at all. But I do like Adams still as a player. I think he's still a good player, so he's going to produce, in my opinion. But look, Darren Waller's there, Hunter Renfro's there. Josh McDaniels, to me, is still going to run the ball to Jacobs. Like he's still Josh McDaniels. So he's Adams is going to be good for the Raiders in real life, and he's going to have a role in the offense. But for fantasy purposes, statistically, it might not be a great year for him. I think you're looking at like 140 targets, which is 20 less, pretty much 30 less than he had last year. You're probably looking at like 8 or 9 touchdowns. And then you're looking at like 1,400 yards, which is still a great season.
Yeah.
But it's not a top 5 receiver in fantasy.
I also I feel like the Raiders, they're in kind of like a weird predicament as a team. And I think is Josh McDaniels going to be a good coach for them? Yeah. He is a good coach. But
yeah, I think so.
And their offense might be better than it was last year, and obviously they added Devante Adams, so that will make your offense better. But it's just not going to be Aaron Rodgers is a freaking league MVP through 3 picks last year. You're not getting that out of Derek Carr. You're not going to roll up to the club with Derek Carr and think that I can't do that. So that's why he's 6. I think there's still a shot that he ends up, having a good season and maybe being a top 5 guy. But I think when you talk about at age 29, switching teams to a team with a new offensive system, where the whole offense is being learned now, and a guy that you haven't played with since freaking college, I just don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like. The Raiders could either be competing with the Chiefs and the Chargers next year for the number 1 spot in the division, or they could be hot.
Even the Broncos.
Or they could be like a team that just, one of those teams that we thought was going to be good that just completely collapses. It could go either way. It's the Raiders. But I think Adams will still be good. I don't I think there's a chance he's a bust, and a higher chance to be a bust than anyone that I really have ranked in the top 12, except for guys that are 10 to 12.
Yeah.
Or also any guy ranked in the top 10 right now. But I just don't buy in on Devante Adams at this point. So there's your top 6. Part 2 on Tuesday. We'll do that.
Okay.
It's a little bit easier. A little bit more digestible, because I remember we used to do an hour and 20-minute show ranking players. So
it's a lot.
So there's your top 6 wide receivers. We're talking about the top 12. We'll talk about the rest on Thursday. See you later, guys.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.